one thing that people say to me a lot when I talk about lucid living, the idea that this is a dream, is, well, when you dream lucidly, sometimes you can change the dream because you're conscious. Is it the same when you live lucidly? Can you change the dream? Can you make it better? It's really, isn't it? Can you bring into your life what you want to bring into your life? And my feeling is, well, first of all, the thing which will begin to happen straight away is you experience this love. And fundamentally, that fills the hole inside the soul. There's nothing else which fills that hole. So whether you then get the big car or the perfect job or all the things you want doesn't become the same imperative, because you realise that fundamentally all of that was just an attempt to fill the hole, which can only be filled by love, by self-knowledge. So that's the most important thing. You see, you don't miss the point, which is love. However, also, the dream is rich and wonderful, and there's lots of things to play with, and what I've definitely found is that everything's connected in that place, and that what Tim thinks has an effect, and what Tim intends has an effect. And I can't, in How Long Is Now, my book, I tell numbers of stories in which extraordinary things happen for me. Probably the most dramatic of which was when I was a musician many years ago. Was literally, it was a long story, I'll just cut it very short, but it went from penniless musician with nothing but a brave project around the environment and a lot of magic happening, to I need a recording studio in a country house, we're going to make a video, we're going to do all this, and literally 2 weeks from the point of the intention, it all just arriving through the most extraordinary series of coincidences. So I know that it works. There's no doubt about that for me whatsoever. It works. However, it doesn't always work. And my feeling is we need to see that, because a lot of the modern stuff that's around gives you the impression that, you're not believing hard enough. Believe harder. Intend harder. Intend more times. I don't think it's like that. It seems to me it's more like planting a seed. It's like the thing which is creating all this isn't Tim. Tim's not the dreamer. Tim is part of the dream. This big awareness which we are, that's the dreamer. And everything which is happening, including what's happening to Tim, is feeding into this imagination which is creating this. So if Tim imagines something, if Tim says, yeah, I can see I'm going to do this, or I want this to happen, it kind of, and lets it go like a seed back into the one mind, there's the possibility that it will flourish. But it is a seed. Now people say things like, and it's a lovely idea, like, look, inside a seed there's a forest. Because, the tree will grow and that will have seeds and there will be another, and so inside that little tree there's a forest. It's a lovely idea. Of course, not true. There's no forests inside a tree, inside a seed. What's inside a seed is information, which can take the environment and the sun and the energy and turn it into a tree and a forest. And I think these intentions are like that. We let them back into the one, into the big mind, and if there is the nutrients for it to grow, metaphorically, if the environment is right for it to flourish, it will. But if it's not, it won't. Which is why in my experience, and you hear people talk about it all the time, people will often, easily manifest a parking space, but it's much more difficult to do world peace. There's been a lot of people working on peace in the Middle East for a while, hasn't happened. But, finding a parking space, getting what you want in this, that can happen, because it's much more easy for that to arise in the collective dream. My thing, with the magical appearing of the recording studio, everything actually was perfectly set up, although I didn't realise it, for it to just go and play out that. Other times in my life, it hasn't worked, or it's almost worked, I had a whole thing around, when I was in my 20s and a musician, I had a whole thing about Van Morrison, because his music had this consciousness-altering effect on me. In fact, Van Morrison was responsible for pulling me out of my meditative retreat. I'd been in meditative retreat for a year, doing pretty much nothing but meditating. Had a fantastic time. And then towards the end, I started listening to Van Morrison's music and realised it was having more effect on me than the meditation. So I dumped the meditation and made music. And so I had a whole thing about Van Morrison for a while, and I intended that he would, I'd meet. And what do you know? I was living in this big manor house with a numbers of other people, and he came to visit. Incredible. He was somebody else. He was coming to visit, but he came to visit. The trouble is I was on holiday in Cuba at the time. And that's what the magic's like. It's like sometimes on the button, sometimes whoop, and not quite, sometimes nothing. And I think it's not because you don't believe enough, it's just because the whole thing is kind of organic. You take a seed, and you can, keep them coming, be creative. And if there's room, it's like the big mind's like a big yes. It wants to say yes, but it can't say yes to everyone. If there's 6 people in a race and they're all going, I intend that I will win, only one of them will. And the rest won't, because that's the way it's set up in polarity. There's winners, there's losers. It's like that with everything. So my feeling is we've over-egged the pudding. We've kind of seen it as more there's a tendency to want to sell people the idea that they could be omnipotent. Tim could be all-powerful. He could create the life he wants. That will never happen, ever. Tim is a fragment. Tim is in duality. There will always be good and bad for Tim. There will always be joy and suffering for Tim. There will always be yum and there will always be yuck. What I can do, though, is interact with my deeper being, which is one with all of it and can love all of it. And if I do that, I can affect how this comes about. Definitely. There's also the idea of karma. It definitely changes it. But it's not all powerful. It doesn't mean you don't suddenly wake up one day and go, yes, I've got rid of bad and only have good now. I've got rid of poverty, I only have riches. I've got rid of night, I only have day. No more rain, just sun for me. No. That's crazy.